Hello, all. I'm doing one of my shedding sessions. Just trying to work on my doubles between my hands and my feet. Now you say, well, what does that mean with your feet? Well, I've got one foot playing doubles and one foot having a bass drum sound on pad up here playing doubles, so I get that, that kind of double kind of roll going. But the thing I wanted to talk to you tonight about was far more important than just shedding a few rudiments or, kind of working on some technique. This is a specialized kind of technique that I really think is essential nowadays. And it's not a pattern or something that you play, but it's something that I think every young drummer should be thinking about doing, if not permanently doing, no matter what. And that is working with a click track. For you non-musicians, or you used to call it a metronome, one of those little things that clicked back and forth and kept you in time. Now it's all done electronically. And it functions the same way, but you can use one of these clicks, a click track, in lots of different ways. Excuse me. A lot of people say, oh, well, I don't like to use a metronome. It really stifles my creativity. Wrong. You can get the electronic metronomes, electronic click tracks, to do anything that you want. Speed up, slow down, do it, play faster in certain sections, slower in certain sections. A click track digitally can be programmed. So the thing about the creativity and thing kind of goes right out the window. Well, and usually that comes from an ideology problem that we've had, I guess, since we've been playing all along, in that people feel that click tracks make you play more non-human. Now, I can tell you that click tracks, or what you want to call metronomes, do a number of things if they're used properly in the right vein. Studio musicians have been using these things for years. You sit down there and you play with a click track, that guarantees you some rhythmic accuracy. But so many times the ideology of people who frown on using it think that they have to stay exactly right with every click. The perfect playing technique means that when you're playing so much, you won't hear the click if you're playing really, really accurately. Something like this. Did you notice in certain sections the click disappeared? Now that is not because of the volume of the instrument, but because my technique at that particular time, although not all the time, was playing right along with the click. And when you are that exactly accurate, where one beat lies right on top of the click will disappear in your headphones. That means you're playing right on time. But that does sound very machine-like, granted. So the one kind of ideology that I implore is a click is there for a reference, and you have to make that click, that timing segment, feel good when you're playing. The real top-flight studio drummers who use click tracks like this, they're playing, but they're not playing exactly on that particular beat. And a lot of guys don't use, there's a function in digitally called quantize. Quantize means if a note's not placed right on a series of grids accurately, move the note over one way or the other. It's kind of like an automatic correct. Well, a lot of people don't like to use the quantize button, and I'm all for that as well. But what I'm talking about here is when you're playing with the click, you use that as a reference. You use that to keep you in a steady pace, but the really good studio drummers know how to play with that click so that it's right on time and yet it feels really good. Let's see if I can play something here and see if we can get something going. So with the click so you can hear what I'm talking about. I was staying with the click, as you heard, and I was counting right along with it. But occasionally, when the click started playing, my snare drum was a little bit behind it, and occasionally it was a little bit in front. So I tried to make it feel a little bit more human rather than just the stagnant machine-like click that goes on. The good studio drummers really know that. Now, what's the advantage of using a click? We've already heard some people say about the disadvantage. What's the real advantage? A, it makes your time better. Sorry, it just does. Muscle memory reacts to that click in your ears as you're playing along, and your time keeps more steady. I will tell you this. Everybody thinks it's for studio drummers. I used to use a click in certain tunes with the Admirals when I was playing, simply because we had some pre-programmed parts to play with it, either a programmed bass line or some extra percussion when we had a real heavy percussion tune. Well, that click kept me right in time leading the band, and that kept me right in time with the parts that we're playing as subordinate parts. So a lot of guys are using them live now too, especially when you have the complicated production numbers that you're seeing on some of these large stages. Well, that's one advantage. And I will tell you that one of the biggest advantages in the studio when using a click, and a friend of mine was actually having some issues with this when he was trying to edit, click tracks make editing very easy, or let's say easier. When you used to have to do a punch in and punch out type thing when you were recording, which means you were going to do a correction or something, you had to kind of splice in a certain part, and you relied right on someone counting you in, or kind of like somebody counting or clicking their sticks or something like that to get you at the punch-in point. Or you had to play along with it as you were going along, and the recording engineer would hit the button when he needed to record the extra part. Well, click tracks make accuracy wonderfully easy when you're playing in the studio, because you pre-program in when a certain beat is going to come. Like your recording session, let's say you're doing a chorus or something like that, and after 8 bars on beat 1 of the next measure, you're going to be doing a punch in. You program that in, and it is about as accurate as you can get to actually punch in a start time. And if a click is going along with that start time, it makes everything end and start at exactly the right time. So running with a click is adventuresome. It's hard to do, especially if you've never used a click before. I remember I did a recording session with a friend of mine down at one of the studios up in Baltimore. And we were doing the session, and there were like 3 or 4 different time changes in the actual thing. We actually played straight ahead time, and then it went into halftime, and then it went into kind of like a triplet kind of feel. And we programmed where the click was, and it made the playing a little bit easier for me, because no longer was I a time keeper, but more of a time follower. And the engineer, John, said to me, he goes, "You've used a click track before, haven't you?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "You can tell, you can see you're always in the grooves, inside the grid, right on the money. If you learn how to use it right off," for my younger students and for my younger friends who I talk to use the metronome, if you learn how to do it right off, it makes things a heck of a lot easier later on down the road. Much less makes you a better player anyway. So do I promote using a click track or a metronome or whatever you want to call it? Yes, I do. Is it mandatory? No, but I think you'll find out you'll make the situation a lot easier when you're performing, when you're recording, and just, when you're kind of having fun. See you next time.